Looking back now, I realized that the truth was hiding in plain sight, wrapped in concern and kindness, delivered with a smile I'd known since the day my son was born. But that morning, as I stood in my kitchen in South Boston, watching the steam rise from my coffee, I had no idea that everything I believed about the people I loved was about to shatter like glass. My name is Robert Hayes. I'm 67 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I knew my son. It started small. The headaches came first, dull and persistent, settling behind my eyes like unwelcome guests who refused to leave. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, my mind buzzing with a restlessness I couldn't explain. My doctor, a young woman fresh out of residency, ran the standard tests. Blood work came back clean. Blood pressure was fine. She suggested stress, maybe grief, because my wife Sarah had passed away 3 years earlier, and sometimes the body remembers loss in strange ways. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe this was normal, that at my age these things just happened. Bodies break down. We slow down. That's the deal we make with time. But deep down, in that place where instinct lives, something felt wrong. My son Michael had always been the ambitious one, while his sister Emily followed my path into engineering. Steady and practical, Michael chased the big dream. Tech startups, venture capital, the kind of life where you're either flying first class or sleeping on someone's couch, no middle ground. For years, he rode that wave, and I was proud. Sarah and I both were. We'd raised a risk taker. Then the wave crashed. 6 months ago, Michael came to me with a proposal. He needed $300,000 to keep his company afloat. Just a bridge loan, he said, until the next funding round came through. His eyes had that desperate shine I'd seen before, back when he was 12 and begging for a second chance after breaking Mrs. Chen's window with a baseball. I said no. I'd said yes too many times before. The money Sarah and I had saved, the retirement we'd planned together, I couldn't risk it. Not again. Michael left my house that day without saying goodbye, and for 2 months I didn't hear from him. Emily told me he'd taken it hard, that I should reach out, but I held firm. Sometimes love means boundaries. Sarah taught me that. Then, on a Tuesday morning in late September, a package arrived. The box was expensive looking, wrapped in that heavy brown paper that says someone spent money on presentation. Inside, nestled in foam padding, was a coffee maker. Not just any coffee maker, a smart one, the kind that connects to your phone and learns your preferences and probably costs more than my first car. The note was simple. Dad, I'm sorry. I know I pushed too hard. I know you were right. This is my way of saying I still love you, and I hope we can move past this. Your mornings with Mom were always about that first cup of coffee. I thought you might like an upgrade. Call me when you're ready. Love, Michael. I stood in my kitchen, holding that note, and felt my throat tighten. This was my boy. Stubborn, yes. Proud, absolutely. But he was reaching out. He was trying. I set up the coffee maker that afternoon, following the app instructions, laughing at myself for needing my reading glasses to see the tiny buttons. It was beautiful, sleek and modern, all brushed steel and touchscreens. It even had my name on a small engraved plate on the side. The first morning, I made a cappuccino. Perfect foam, perfect temperature. I sat at the kitchen table where Sarah used to read the paper, and for a moment, everything felt right again. That's when the headaches got worse. Week 1, I blamed allergies. Week 2, my doctor suggested a sleep study. By week 3, I was having trouble concentrating. I'd be reading a book and realize I'd read the same paragraph 4 times without retaining a single word. My neighbor, Mrs. Kowalski, asked if I was feeling all right. I looked tired, she said. Worn out. I told her I was fine. I wasn't fine. The insomnia became brutal. 3 hours a night if I was lucky. I'd lie in bed, feeling my heart race for no reason, my thoughts spinning like a carousel that wouldn't stop. During the day, I'd get waves of dizziness, moments where the room tilted sideways and I'd have to grab the counter to steady myself. My hands developed a tremor, small at first, barely noticeable. but growing. Back to the doctor. More tests. Brain scan came back clean. No tumors. No strokes. She mentioned anxiety again. Maybe depression. She wrote a prescription for sleeping pills. I filled it, but never took them. Something about medicating symptoms without knowing the cause felt wrong. Emily called every few days, worried. I downplayed it. Just getting old, sweetheart. Nothing to worry about. She'd just had her second baby, and I didn't want to add to her stress. Michael called too, once, asking if I liked the coffee maker. I told him I loved it, that I used it every morning, that it made me think of him. His voice on the other end sounded pleased, almost excited. That should have been my first clue. The turning point came on a Thursday afternoon in late October. I was in my garage, trying to fix a leak in my workbench, when my neighbor Tom Chen knocked on the door. Tom's an electrical engineer, works for one of the big companies in Cambridge, and we'd helped each other with various projects over the years. Good man. Solid. Rob, you got a minute? He said. I need to ask you something weird. I set down my wrench. Weird how? Tom stepped into the garage, looking uncomfortable. Karen and I have been hearing this sound. High-pitched, intermittent. Started about a month ago. It's driving her crazy. She's convinced it's coming from your side of the property line. I frowned. I haven't heard anything. That's the thing, Tom said. I can barely hear it either. It's right at the edge of human hearing range. I brought my spectrum analyzer home from work, just out of curiosity, and I'm picking up a strong electromagnetic field signature coming from your house. Specifically, from your kitchen. My stomach dropped. Electromagnetic field? Yeah. It's not dangerous in small doses, but prolonged exposure can cause symptoms. Headaches, sleep disruption, cognitive issues. He paused. Rob, have you been feeling okay? I just stared at him. We went inside together. Tom had his analyzer, a device about the size of a phone that showed wavelength patterns on its screen. As we walked toward the kitchen, the readings spiked. The closer we got to the coffee maker, the stronger the signal became. This is your source, Tom said, pointing at the machine. This thing is putting out a serious EMF signature, way higher than it should be for a normal appliance. It's new, I said, my voice sounding hollow. Gift from my son. Tom unplugged it. The readings on his device immediately dropped. He looked at me, then at the coffee maker, then back at me. Rob, I don't want to overstep here, but this isn't normal. Someone modified this. These smart appliances have EMF emissions, sure, but this is intentional. This is designed to emit at a frequency that would cause exactly the symptoms you're describing. The room felt too small suddenly, too hot. You're saying someone weaponized my coffee maker. I'm saying someone installed a device inside it that's making you sick. Tom's voice was gentle, but his eyes were hard. And if it was a gift, you need to ask yourself who would do that and why. After Tom left, I sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours, just staring at that coffee maker. The engraved nameplate caught the afternoon light. Robert Hayes. My son had put my name on a weapon. No, I couldn't believe that. Michael was desperate. Yes. Angry about the money. Probably. But this was calculated. This was cruel. This was the kind of thing you'd need to plan, to research, to execute with cold precision. My son wasn't capable of that. Was he? I opened my laptop and started searching. EMF exposure symptoms. Everything matched. The headaches, the insomnia, the confusion and tremors. The timeline matched too. 4 weeks since the coffee maker arrived. 4 weeks of deteriorating health. Then I made a mistake. I should have called Emily. I should have called the police. Instead, I did what any father would do when faced with the unthinkable. I looked for another explanation. I checked my email. Michael and I shared an old family account that we used for photos and documents, stuff from when the kids were young. I hadn't logged in for months. When I did, I found a folder I didn't recognize. Recent documents, shared with an email address I didn't know. My hands were shaking as I opened the first file. It was a medical power of attorney form. Blank, but with notes in the margins. Needs 2 physicians to declare incompetent. Estimated timeline, 4 to 6 months with current exposure levels. The second file was worse. An email chain between Michael and someone named David Brennan, a lawyer, based on the signature. They were discussing guardianship procedures in Massachusetts, how to establish cognitive decline, what symptoms would be most convincing to a judge. The third file was a spreadsheet. My assets, my accounts, my house. Everything itemized with current values and projected liquidation timelines. I closed the laptop, opened it again. Read everything twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. The words didn't change. The plan was there, laid out in black and white. Make me sick, make me seem incompetent. Get guardianship. Access the money. My son was trying to kill me. Not quickly. Slowly. Methodically. Letting me think I was losing my mind while he positioned himself to take everything. I threw up in the kitchen sink. When I could breathe again, I called Emily. She didn't answer. I tried 3 more times. Finally, I left a message. Sweetheart, it's Dad. I need you to call me back as soon as you can. It's important. It's about your brother. Then I called Tom Chen. I need your help, I said when he answered. And I need you to not ask questions until I'm done explaining. To his credit, Tom just said, I'll be right over. We spent the next 2 hours documenting everything. Tom photographed the coffee maker from every angle. He opened the casing and found the modified circuit board, the extra components that had nothing to do with making coffee and everything to do with generating harmful electromagnetic frequencies. He took readings. He wrote down specifications. He treated it like the crime scene it was. You need to call the police, Tom said. This is attempted murder, Rob. Or at the very least, elder abuse and fraud. I will, I said. But first, I need proof that it was Michael. Right now, all I have is a modified appliance and some emails that a lawyer could explain away. I need him to admit it. Tom looked at me for a long moment. You want to confront him. I want to record him. I want him to think he's won, that I'm too confused to understand what's happening, and I want him to tell me why. That's dangerous. I know. Emily called back an hour after Tom left. Her voice was tight with worry. Dad, what's wrong? Is it your health? I almost told her everything right then. But Emily was Michael's sister. They'd been close their whole lives. If I told her what I suspected, she might warn him. She might not believe me. I needed to be sure first. I'm okay, honey, I lied. I just wanted to hear your voice. How's the baby? We talked for 10 minutes about normal things. Her daughter's sleep schedule, her husband's new job, the weather. When we hung up, I felt like I'd aged 10 years. I was lying to my daughter to trap my son. What had my family become? That night, I unplugged the coffee maker and slept for 8 hours. The first real sleep I'd had in a month. I woke up clear-headed, the fog in my brain already starting to lift. Tom was right. The exposure had been making me sick, and now that I understood what was happening, I could feel my body starting to heal. I spent Friday preparing. I called my lawyer, a guy named Patterson who'd handled Sarah's estate. I explained the situation, showed him the emails, the photos Tom had taken. He sat across from his desk, his face getting paler with each piece of evidence. Jesus. Rob, he finally said, you need to go to the police. I will. But I want everything documented first. I want a trail that can't be disputed. Patterson drew up an affidavit. I signed it. He made copies of everything and put them in his safe. Then he gave me a small recording device, the kind lawyers use for depositions. Voice activated, he said. Clip it inside your shirt pocket. Massachusetts is a one-party consent state, so as long as you're part of the conversation, you can record legally. But Rob, please be careful. If your son is capable of this, he's capable of worse. Saturday morning, I called Michael. He sounded surprised to hear from me. Pleased even. Dad. Hey, how are you feeling? The question made my skin crawl. Not great, actually. I think I need to see a specialist. The headaches are getting worse. Concern flooded his voice. Perfectly calibrated concern. That's not good. Have you talked to your doctor? She doesn't know what's wrong. Michael, I'm getting worried. I'm forgetting things. Having trouble concentrating. I was thinking maybe I should update some paperwork. You know, medical power of attorney, that kind of thing. Just in case. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully. That's probably smart, Dad. Do you need help with that? Would you mind? I know we had that disagreement about the loan, but you're still my son. I trust you. More silence. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Of course. I can come by tomorrow. We can talk about it. Actually, could you come today? I'm having a good day cognitively, and I want to handle this while I'm clear-headed. Yeah, absolutely. I can be there in an hour. I hung up and checked the recording device, working perfectly. Then I called Tom and asked him to stay close, maybe work in his yard, keep an eye on my house. He didn't ask why. He just said he'd be there. 58 minutes later, Michael's car pulled into my driveway. I watched him through the window, taking in the details I'd missed before. The expensive suit that he shouldn't have been able to afford if his company was really failing. The confident walk of someone who thought they'd already won. He'd brought a briefcase. Of course he had. Probably full of forms for me to sign. I opened the door before he could knock. Michael, thank you for coming. He smiled. Sarah's smile on a face that suddenly looked like a stranger's. Of course, Dad. You sounded worried on the phone. We sat in the living room. I offered him coffee from the pot I'd made the old-fashioned way, with my ancient drip maker that Tom had checked and declared safe. Michael declined. He set his briefcase on the coffee table and pulled out a folder. I took the liberty of having some forms drawn up, he said. Just basic stuff. Medical power of attorney, living will, that kind of thing. I thought it might save you some stress. I looked at the forms. They were real, professionally prepared, dated 3 weeks ago. He'd been planning this for a while. That's thoughtful, I said. My voice sounded calm. Inside, I was screaming. Before we get into that, though, I need to ask you something. Sure, the coffee maker you sent. It's been wonderful. But Tom Chen, you remember Tom from next door? He's an electrical engineer. He came by the other day because Karen was complaining about a noise. He brought some kind of analyzer with him and found something strange. An electromagnetic field coming from the coffee maker. Michael's expression didn't change, but his hands tensed slightly. Really? That's weird. It's a smart appliance, so it has wireless connectivity, but nothing that should cause problems. That's what I thought. But Tom said the emissions were unusually high, and I started thinking about the timing. My symptoms started right after I got the machine. The headaches, the insomnia, the confusion. It all lines up. Dad, correlation doesn't mean causation. You're stressed. You're grieving. These symptoms could be from a lot of things. Could be, I agreed. So I unplugged it, Thursday night, and I slept better than I have in a month. Woke up clear-headed. The tremor in my hands is already improving. Michael leaned back in his chair. His face was carefully neutral. I'm glad you're feeling better, but I'm not sure what you're implying. This was it. The moment. I could feel the recording device pressing against my chest, capturing every word. I'm implying that someone modified that coffee maker to make me sick. And I'm wondering if that someone was you. The silence stretched out like taffy. Michael looked at me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize my son. The warmth was gone from his eyes. What replaced it was cold calculation. That's a serious accusation, he said quietly. I found the emails, Michael. The ones you shared with David Brennan about guardianship procedures. The spreadsheet with my assets. The timeline for establishing incompetence. I found all of it. His jaw tightened. You went through my files. They were in our shared family account. And you know what the funny thing is? Part of me was hoping I'd find something else. Some explanation that would make sense. Because I didn't want to believe my son was capable of this. Michael stood up. He walked to the window, looked out at the street. At Tom Chen, who was very obviously trimming hedges that didn't need trimming. You don't understand. Michael said, his back to me. You have no idea what it's like to have everything fall apart. My company, my reputation, my entire future. And you, sitting here in this house that's worth over $1 million, with your retirement accounts and your pension, you looked me in the eye and said no. So you decided to kill me? He spun around. I wasn't going to kill you. The exposure levels were calibrated to cause cognitive decline, not death. You would have become incompetent. I would have gotten guardianship. I would have had access to the resources I needed to rebuild, and you would have been cared for. I was going to put you in the best facility in Massachusetts. The matter-of-fact tone was somehow worse than if he'd been shouting. This wasn't rage. This was planning. And then what? I asked. After you'd taken everything? After you'd put me in a facility while I was still aware enough to know I'd been betrayed? You would have forgotten eventually. The symptoms would have progressed to the point where you wouldn't have known the difference. I stood up slowly. My legs felt weak, but my voice was steady. You're my son. I changed your diapers. I taught you to ride a bike. I sat with you in the hospital when you broke your arm in Little League, and you looked at me and saw nothing but a resource to be harvested. I saw a father who chose money over his own child. I chose boundaries over enabling you. There's a difference. Michael picked up his briefcase. Are you going to call the police? They're already on their way. Tom called them 20 minutes ago. His face paled. You recorded this. Every word. For a moment, I thought he might run. But where would he go? Instead, he sat back down, and I saw something crack in his expression. Shame, maybe. Or just the realization that he'd miscalculated. I'm sorry, he said, and his voice broke. Dad, I'm so sorry. I was desperate. I wasn't thinking clearly. Please, we can fix this. We can work this out. No, I said gently. We can't. The police arrived 15 minutes later. They took statements from me, from Tom, from Michael. They bagged the coffee maker as evidence. Patterson arrived with his copies of everything, and I watched as the detectives went through the emails, the photos, the medical documentation of my symptoms. Michael was arrested on charges of elder abuse, attempted fraud, and assault with a dangerous instrument. The last one surprised me until the detective explained that the modified coffee maker qualified as a weapon under Massachusetts law. My son was led to a patrol car in handcuffs while Mrs. Kowalski and half the neighborhood watched from their porches. Emily called that night, hysterical. Michael had gotten one phone call, and he'd used it to warn her. I told her everything. She cried. So did I. We stayed on the phone for 2 hours, trying to make sense of something that would never make sense. The trial took 8 months. Michael's lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity, financial desperation, temporary insanity. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Rodriguez, methodically destroyed every argument. She brought in Tom as an expert witness. She had my medical records, showing the dramatic improvement in my symptoms after I stopped using the coffee maker. She had the emails, the timeline, the evidence of premeditation. Michael was convicted on all counts. The judge, an older man who reminded me of my father, looked at my son and said, "You weaponized a father's love. That's not desperation. That's calculation. And it requires consequences. 25 years. Eligible for parole after 15. I didn't attend the sentencing. Emily went, because she needed to say goodbye to her brother. I stayed home and made coffee in my old drip machine, the one that had sat in my garage for a month while I slowly lost my mind to a gift wrapped in concern. People ask me if I've forgiven him. The answer is complicated. I've forgiven the boy who broke Mrs. Chen's window. I've forgiven the teenager who wrecked my car and lied about it. I've even forgiven the young man who kept asking for money he didn't earn. But the man who looked at my declining health and saw opportunity, the one who calculated exposure levels and guardianship timelines while I suffered, I'm still working on that forgiveness. What I have found is peace. My health returned, slowly but completely. The tremors stopped. The sleep came back. The fog lifted. Emily and I talk every day. Her daughters call me Grandpa and video chat to show me their drawings. Tom and I built a garden in my backyard. Life continues, but I've learned something important. The people we love are capable of things we never imagine, both beautiful and terrible. Trust isn't blind faith. It's a choice we make every day, based on evidence and behavior, not just blood and history. If there's a message in my story, it's this: pay attention. When something feels wrong, it usually is. When your body tells you something's off, listen. And when someone's kindness comes with conditions, look closer at what they're really offering. Because sometimes, the most dangerous gift is the one that comes wrapped in love.